Yo, what is going on, NFL fans? Welcome back to the channel. In today's episode, we're going to go over the draft grades for each of the teams in the NFC East. We're going to start with the Commanders and with the Eagles, break down all the selections for each one of these teams. Stick around. We're going to kick this off with the Washington Commanders, who had the second pick in the NFL draft, and they took Jayden Daniels. He was one of my favorite players in this entire draft class. I actually like him a little bit better than Caleb Williams. He's a little more slender of a frame, so I think that's why Chicago went with Caleb Williams over Jayden Daniels. And Caleb Williams is just a little more accurate. He's a little bit more polished at this point in his career. But man, Jayden Daniels, that elusiveness, his ability to throw the deep ball is second to no one in this draft. Then they went with D-tackle Drazan Newton. They definitely had to address the defensive line. Chase Young got traded last year. So did Montez Sweat. So that D-line needed to be addressed. They needed some help. They got Johnny Newton, who's one of the best D-tackles in this class. There's only two really good ones. He's one of them. He's a very good player. And the fact that they were able to get him in the second round is pretty awesome for the Commanders. I like what they did for the most part. Then they went Mike Sanastrilli from Michigan, the cornerback. He's not one of my favorite cornerbacks in this draft. Outside of the top maybe three, potentially four guys, I don't love a lot of the corners in this draft. 5'9", 182. Decent size. He's an okay player, but the Commanders really needed to address the defensive back position. They got a pretty decent corner in Mike Sanastrilli. And then they went tight end. They traded up to get Ben Sinnott from Kansas State. Before the draft, they had Zach Ertz penciled in as the number one tight end. He's aging. He's not the player he was 5-6 years ago with the Eagles. He's just not. Ben Sinnott is one of the best tight ends in this entire draft class. 6'4", 250 pounds. He's got good hands. He runs clean routes, and he's a pretty decent blocker too, in my opinion. I like this pick for the Commanders. They're really just banging out, check marking all the holes they have on this roster. That's exactly how they drafted. They drafted for need in all these positions. Then they went Brandon Coleman. Brandon Coleman, he had a really good 2022. He regressed considerably in 2023. So I think they took a flyer on a guy who played well at some point in his college career and kind of regressed a little bit, and hopefully they can coach him up and get him back to where he was playing a few years ago. Then Luke McCaffrey, the wide receiver from Rice, very good player. I think you could always add wide receiver depth. This wide receiver class is very deep. In most drafts, a guy like Luke McCaffrey with his skill set would probably be a second-round pick, in my opinion. But there's so many amazing guys that got picked in the late first round, early second round, kind of push this crop of wide receivers back a little bit in the draft. Then Jordan McGee, the linebacker from Temple. He's one of the better linebackers in this class, and a pretty weak linebacker class. I like Jordan McGee. Good size, 6'1", 228. I want to see him add a little bit of weight. I want to see him around 240. With their last two picks, they went defense, man. They went safety and then edge with Dominique Hampton and Jean Baptista. I don't know if these guys are going to make the roster. A lot of these 5th, 6th, 7th round picks are competing for roster spots. They're going to be more special teams guys. I didn't see anything special about these two players. They're kind of just like depth roster guys that are going to be number 50, 51, 52 on the roster if they make the team. For the most part, I really liked what the Washington Commanders did in this draft, especially early. I might have went with a different cornerback than Mike Sanastrilli personally. He wasn't one of my favorite guys, but getting Ben Sinnott, Johnny Newton, and Jayden Daniels with their first 4 picks, Luke McCaffrey could be an interesting guy in the slot too. I'm going to go B+ for the Washington Commanders. I think there are some spots where they kind of overdrafted guys a little bit. We'll see how this draft class plays out. Ben Sinnott in the second round might be a little bit of a overdraft in my opinion. I don't know if he's worth a second round pick. There wasn't a ton of really good tight ends in this draft, so maybe that's why they overdrafted him. But B+ for the Commanders. Let's move on to the Cowboys. All right, Cowboys fans, I don't have a lot of great news for you in regards to this draft. I think out of all the teams in the NFC East, the Dallas Cowboys had the worst draft. The Dallas Cowboys traded with the Detroit Lions, traded back, and then they took Tyler Guyton, the offensive lineman for Oklahoma. He only started 14 games in college. He's a monster, though. 6'8", 322. You can't really teach that size. Is he ready to come in and start for a team that might have the worst set of offensive tackles in the NFL. Guyton might find himself starting. I don't know. He is 6'8", 322, but he's super raw. ESPN gave him an 87 grade. I think he's more in that 78 to 80 range. Personally, he just doesn't have a lot of experience. For a first-round pick, you want a guy who can come in and help your team right away, and I don't think Tyler Guyton can do that. Not my favorite pick for sure. And then with the number 2 pick, they took Marshawn Nealon from Western Michigan edge. They need some edge help to go along with Micah Parsons and Lawrence. He's a really good player. 86 overall grade. The fact that he fell this far in the draft is kind of crazy. 6'3", 267 pounds. He's got long arms to take on blockers. He's really explosive. He's got good strength. He's really good at using his hands to get off blocks. I like this pick better than the first pick personally. But I really love their third round pick, Cooper Beebe. They needed linebacker help really bad with Leighton Vander Esch having to retire. So getting a linebacker here is a good pick. I think I like J.D. Bertrand better, but Maurice is more of an off-ball linebacker. He's a good player, not a great player. ESPN has him graded at a 64. He's got good length and runs well. He's got good effort. He's a good player. We'll see how it pans out at the NFL level. All right, Cowboys fans, Dallas did not have a 4th-round pick. So in the 5th round, they took Khalil Carson, the cornerback from Wake Forest, 6 foot, 199 pounds. He's a decent player. He's tough. He's really good at getting off blocks and come up and make tackles. He does miss some tackles, though, which I didn't love in his tape. But he's a very scheme versatile guy. He could play in zone. He can play man-to-man. And he's a bigger corner, so he kind of uses that size to his advantage. In the 6th round, they went wide receiver Ryan Flournoy from Southeast Missouri State. I don't even know who this guy was at all whatsoever. ESPN has him as a 34 grade, 6'1", 202. He's got good toughness. He's got a solid frame at 6'1", 202, big hands. He can make plays over the middle of the field. He averaged 15.4 yards per catch over the past 2 seasons, and he ran a 4.44 40. Pretty solid times. Not a bad pick in the 6th round. And then they had 2 7th-round picks. They went offensive tackle and defensive tackle, Nathan Thomas from Louisiana and Justin Rogers from Auburn. Again, 7th-round picks are not really going to be difference makers. They might not even make the team, but they need to add some more depth to the offensive tackle room. 6'5", 332-pound Nathan Thomas. He's got good size. He's quick off the line of scrimmage. So maybe he carves himself out a place in this rotation of offensive linemen for the Dallas Cowboys. This draft was not my favorite draft, especially in the first couple rounds. I mean, you got an offensive guard. You got a tackle who probably isn't going to play the first year. You added some edge help. You already got pretty good edge players. I don't know if he's going to play a linebacker too a little bit. I don't love this draft. I'm going C+ for the Dallas Cowboys. I don't know. I don't necessarily love Tyler Guyton. He's just so raw. He might not be starting for maybe 2, 3, maybe even 4 years. He's that raw of a player. He's really young too. I think he's only 21. So C+ for the Cowboys. Let's move on to the New York Giants. All right, all my New York Giants fans. The Giants only had 6 picks, but they made the most of them in my opinion. Malik Neighbors, he was my number 1 wide receiver on my board. I just like his toughness, his aggressiveness, his ability to go up and get the ball, and his route running. I just liked him as a better prospect than Marvin Harrison Jr. Neighbors has got that junkyard dog in him a little bit. I think he can just do a little bit more, and I think he's a cleaner catcher of the football than Marvin Harrison Jr. I love that pick. If Daniel Jones can't get it done with Malik Neighbors, the dude's got to get his walking papers. Then they went Tyler Nubin, the safety from Minnesota, in round 2. And in my opinion, him and Javon Bullard were 2 of the best safeties, and Cooper DeJean were the best safeties in this entire draft. Tyler Nubin is a pure safety. He's not going to play corner at the next level like Cooper DeJean might. Tyler Nubin, a great pick, man. He's a very good player. 6'2", 199 pounds. He's a versatile safety. He can come up and play in the slot. He's instinctive. He can do pretty much everything, man. He can track the ball really well. He's got good ball skills, 83 overall grade. And then the next pick, they needed to go cornerback. In the 3rd round, they took Andrew Phillips from Kentucky. Listen, the Giants don't have one cornerback in the top 100 rankings on PFF. They needed to go cornerback. I'm surprised they didn't go in the 2nd round, but Nubin was just too good to pass up, I think. I like addressing the cornerback position for the Giants. Their cornerbacks are trash. He could find his way into starting early on in the season, if not when the season starts. Andrew Phillips, the cornerback from Kentucky, another good pick. Then they went Theo Johnson, the tight end from Penn State, 6'6", 259 pounds. He's a beast, man. The dude's got a lot of talent. He didn't have the best stats at Penn State, but he's just a beast, man. 4.57 40-yard dash. He's got the speed to get open down the field, work the seam. With Theo Johnson and Malik Neighbors, Daniel Jones has all these new shiny weapons. He needs to succeed, or at least be a lot better than he's been the last few years, and most importantly, stay healthy. I wish they would have got some more offensive linemen in this draft because they didn't draft any at all. They have an okay offensive line. They don't have a great offensive line. In the 5th round, I like this pick. He was a really fun player to scout, Tyrone Tracy Jr. from Purdue. 54 rank, I don't necessarily agree with that. I think he's more in that 65 to 70 range. He moved from receiver to running back in 2023. He doesn't have a ton of experience at running back, but that's good because there's not a lot of tread on his tires. But he's very elusive. He's strong. He's quick. He can run inside and outside. And obviously he was a wide receiver before, so he's got really good hands to catch the ball out of the backfield. I really like this pick for the Giants. And then they went Darius Massasow from UCLA, the linebacker, who kind of got overshadowed by Laiatu Latu. He's a very good player, man. For him to go in the 6th round is crazy to me. Giving him a 40 grade, I don't agree with that at all. He led UCLA in tackles in each of the past 2 seasons, and that's playing opposite of Laiatu Latu, who was the absolute machine, man. So I don't know where they're getting this 40 grade from. I don't agree with that at all whatsoever. I love the Giants draft, guys. I'm going to go B+ for the Giants. They could have gotten an A- if they didn't trade away their picks. They only had 6 picks, and for a team that has this many holes, I want them to have all 7 picks, get some compensatory picks, kind of add more picks. They only had 6 picks. I didn't love that. So B+ overall grade for the Giants. I really like this draft class. I can't wait to see how Daniel Jones works with these new weapons. He's got a brand new tight end and the best wide receiver in the draft, in my opinion, in Malik Neighbors. B+ for the Giants. Let's move on to the best team in the NFC East, the Philadelphia Eagles. Woo! All right, Bird Gang, the Philadelphia Eagles, without a doubt, in my opinion, had the best draft in all of the NFC East. A- grade for me. Let's talk about who all they got. Number 1, they went Quinyon Mitchell out of Toledo with the number 22 pick. The fact that he fell to the Eagles at 22 and Howie Roseman didn't get overzealous and trade picks. They were just patient. They let the board play out, and they got their guy at 22, 92 overall grade. Probably the best cornerback in the draft. He's 6 foot. He runs a 4.33 40. The dude can dust. He can game. He can tackle. He's everything you want out of a cornerback at the NFL level. I love Quinyon Mitchell. And then the surprise pick of the draft. They had 2 second-round picks, but they comboed one of them to move up early in the 2nd round and draft Cooper DeJean. He's probably going to play safety. He's going to probably play a little bit of corner. He'll probably play a little bit of nickel. This guy can do it all. He's got good, smooth hips. He can really drive on the football. His tape is really good. I'm going to make a video on just him very soon. 6 foot, 203 pounds. And at his pro day, he ran a 4.43 40. So he has the speed and the length and the size to play outside corner and play these big, physical wide receivers in the NFL. Can he be a number 1 corner? We'll have to see how that happens. But having him and Mitchell on the outside after the season would be great. I don't think Bradbury's going to make the roster. I really don't. I think he's going to get cut. The only reason why he's not getting cut is because there's $15 million in dead money if the Eagles cut him. Yikes. But Slay and Bradbury probably won't be here next year. So after this coming season, it'll be Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell probably on the outside. And if they don't think he can play outside in this scheme, he'll just move to safety, and he'll be one of the best safeties in the NFL for sure. And then this is the wild card of the draft. Jalix Hunt from Houston Christian. He's got all the physical tools in the world. 6'4", 252 pounds. He's probably going to play outside linebacker for the Eagles, but he didn't really play against the best competition at Houston Christian. So we'll have to see how Vic Fangio develops him as a pass rusher. And if he's going to play outside linebacker, he's going to have to be able to drop in the coverage too. Hunt's got good versatility. He can play on the line of scrimmage, off the line of scrimmage, and they think he has the speed to stay with some of the tight ends at the NFL level. We'll have to see how he is in coverage in camp and see if he can be a starting outside linebacker in this Vic Fangio 3-4 scheme. Solid pick. I don't know a lot about him. I didn't really scout him that much in the draft process, so I'm really interested to see what type of player he is and if all these intangibles kind of play out on the field at the NFL level. Then we needed another running back. Saquon Barkley can't do it all, right? And then Kenneth Gainwell, I don't know. I'm not a big fan of his. Will Shipley can do a lot of different things. He's got decent size too, 5'11", 206. He's really good at catching the ball out of the backfield. He can kind of be a complementary piece in that running back room. I like this pick for the Eagles. And then they went Anaya Smith from Texas A&M, the wide receiver. This dude is really, really, really good, man. He fell late in the 5th round. He finished his career as the only 2,000-yard receiver in SEC history to also record at least 250 rushing yards, punt return, and kick return yards. So this dude can do everything, man. He can play special teams, which is great for a 5th-round pick, and he can compete for playing time in the slot for the Eagles this year. Kellen Moore really likes to have those two outside guys and then have a really good slot that can contribute on moving the sticks. Anaya Smith could be that guy for the Eagles that falls into that slot role. They've a few guys competing for that spot right now. And then we move on to the next pick in the 5th round. The Eagles had 3 5th-round picks. Jeremiah Trotter Jr. He's a good player, man. He had a good career at Clemson. I did a video on him where I broke down some of his tape. He does have a lot of bad habits. He can take some bad angles sometimes. And he's small, and he's got short arms. So when these tackles and guards, the pulling ones especially, work their way up to the next level, he kind of gets washed out of plays a little bit. He kind of gets pushed around a little bit because he's not the biggest guy in the world. And he doesn't have long arms, so he doesn't have the best leverage. But he can definitely be a special teams guy. And since the Eagles are in that 3-4 look, he's going to get some playing time, I think, this year. Maybe 15 to 25% of the snaps. And we'll see if he can tackle at the NFL level. He had like a 16% missed tackle rate, another thing I didn't really like. That's a really big number, man. Missing almost 20% of your tackles in college is not going to translate well, in my opinion, to the NFL, where these running backs and tight ends are going to be way harder to get to the ground than the players in college. The next pick in the 5th round I absolutely love. Trevor Keegan was a 3-year starter for the Michigan Wolverines. He was a captain on their team this year, the national champion Michigan Wolverines. And you know, if you're going to start for Michigan with Harbaugh as your coach, you know you're a junkyard dog, man. For him to fall in the 5th round, and he can compete for that right guard spot, I'm telling you right now, with Steen. Keegan and Steen are going to be competing for that starting right guard spot, I think, this year. He's big too, 6'6", 311 pounds. I just like his game a lot. And he adds good depth. If he doesn't beat out Steen to start, he could be that kind of swing guard guy and maybe even swing at tackle if they absolutely needed him to, because he's got the size, 6'6", 311. His arms aren't the longest, so that's why he plays guard instead of tackle. But I like this pick in the 5th round. Solid pick. 3-year starter at Michigan for one of the best running programs in all of college football. Solid player. And in the 6th round, they went Johnny Wilson. This guy from Florida State is a monster. 6'6", 231 pounds. I saw some measurables having him at 6'7". And he's got good speed, too. He's pretty fast for being that big. I think he ran like a 4.5 or something. So he's got big-time speed, and he's a monster. He's so tall, 6'6", 6'7", 230 pounds. He could be a real threat in the red zone, guys. I like this pick. Take a flyer on him a little bit. The issue with Johnny Wilson is he drops the ball a lot. So they got to develop his hands a little bit. But if they can get him, with under a 10%, 8% drop rate, he could be a serious player on the outside at some point for the Eagles and be a real deep threat. And then they went Dylan McMahon, the offensive guard for NC State, add a little more depth to that offensive line room, get him into Jeff Statland U, coach him up. Good player, 6'3", 299. He started all 44 games and played 3 interior line positions in college. So he could play left guard, he could play right guard, he can play center. We needed another backup center, so he kind of fits all the needs. He can play center, he can play both guard positions. A great depth piece in the 6th round. I love this draft for the Eagles, man. We got the interior line help that we needed. We got some secondary help. We added a little edge help. We added some wide receivers to these high-paid wide receivers that we have competing for playing time. I like those picks too. Added another linebacker in Jeremiah Trotter Jr. He's a young guy too, so I hope he can develop over time and get better at getting off blocks. But overall, I love this draft class, man. I love this draft class. A- grade for me. The only reason why I didn't give it an A or an A+, there's some unknowns. I don't know how Jeremiah Trotter is going to translate to the NFL. He is a 5th round pick, so it's not that big of a deal. But they picked a running back in the 4th round. They probably could have got Shipley in the 5th round. They might have overdrafted him a little bit in the 4th round, especially because he's not going to play that much. And then Hunt in the 3rd round. He could be great or he could be a bust. Hunt probably has the most bust potential out of all these guys, in my opinion. So I love this draft class. I think the Eagles did a really good job. I think the Cowboys did the worst, and I like the Commanders and Giants draft as well. We'll have to see if Daniel Jones can put it together with those new weapons and how Jaden Daniels' game translate. He's got really good receivers there in Washington, so it'll be a lot of fun to watch these teams. I think the Eagles are going to win the division, and I think the Commanders, Giants, and Cowboys are all going to be in the mix for 2nd place. The Cowboys needed a lot of help on offensive line and didn't really get it. So I think that offensive line is really going to struggle. I think they're going to struggle to run the ball, and Dak Prescott is going to get sacked a lot this year. All right, let me know in the comments below. What are your grades for each one of these teams and their draft in 2024? Thanks so much for tuning in. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Peace.